What's up guys, it is Mike from Mana Hoarders. In this video we are bringing you a commander deck tech for some Jeskai commander partners, Brallin, Skyshark Rider, and Shabraz, the Skyshark. You can cast Brallin, Skyshark Rider for 3 and a red. He is a 3/3 human shaman. He is a partner to Shabraz. Whenever you discard a card, he will get a +1/+1 counter and deal 1 damage to each opponent. You can also pay 1 red and give target shark trample until end of turn. And you can cast Shabraz for 3, a white, and a blue. He is a 3/3 shark bird with flying. Whenever you draw a card, he'll get a +1/+1 counter and you will gain a life. You can also pay a white or a blue and give target human flying until end of turn. Before we dive into the deck, let's go over a few key points. First up, the final price of this deck came in at $101.89. Now, this does include the price of the Jeskai Commander 2020 Precon and all of our upgrades. In terms of power level, I would rate this current build at around a 6 out of 10 on the power scale. Now, we do have plenty of room for upgrades and improvements, but I feel what we have here is a great place to start. In total, we are going to be removing 30 cards from the Precon to make room for our replacements. Let's go over our artifacts. Abandoned Sarcophagus. This really only draws us benefit if we have cards with cycling in our graveyard that we want to cast. Bonder's Ornament. It's extremely inefficient mana ramp and offers us a very expensive form of card draw. And Fluctuator. It will literally only benefit us if we have cards with cycling in our hand. Next up are our creatures. Agitator Ant. I will not lie that this card was extremely fun to play and offered some pretty interesting interactions at the table, but it was cut to make room for some cards that offer us a little bit more synergy. Akim the Soaring Wind. This is a new legendary creature. I think it'd be extremely good in a token-focused deck, but really with what we have going on with these two partner commanders, it just did not fit what we wanted to do. Cryptic Trilobite. I get that we can remove 1/1 counters to add 2 colorless mana, and this could help us cast some pretty large spells, but honestly, it's an easy remove to make room for something that offers us a bit more value. Eternal Dragon. Personally, I feel this is a pretty easy remove. Plain cycling for 2 is cool, but then only being able to recycle this if you pay 5 mana and then paying another 2 just seems like a very inefficient way to try and get land into your hand. I get maybe if we're extra desperate, this can be nice, but I feel that with enough card draw included, we're going to be able to draw into those lands pretty effectively. We will be removing Gavi. We're not too focused on the cycling ability specifically, and quite honestly, getting 1/2/2 whenever you draw your second card each turn, in my humble opinion, doesn't seem like that much value for what we want to try and execute. Herald of the Forgotten. For 8 mana, I get that we can get all of our cycling cards back from our graveyard, but again, they're going to be coming to the battlefield, so it's not going to allow us to draw or discard, gaining us any value from the commanders we are running. Isperia, Supreme Judge. Now, I understand that she is going to allow us to draw cards, so this would directly benefit Shabraz. However, this is specifically predicated on our opponents either attacking us or planeswalkers we control. Now, in this build, we do not want to specifically have to rely on our opponents attacking us to draw value, so she was actually swapped out for something that can give us a bit more consistent card draw in this deck. Rooting Moloch was cut. It really doesn't synergize too well with the 2 partner commanders we are running. The same could be said with Savai Thundermane. We're not going to have too many cards that focus on cycling, so this one was an easy cut. Spellpire Phoenix, it's going to allow us to get it back from our graveyard if we cycle 2 cards, which even if 1 is for free, paying 2 to try and get a 4/2 with flying back to our hand really doesn't seem that great. Valiant Rescuer, again, completely predicated on the cycling, which we're moving away for these commanders. And Vizier of the Tumbling Sands. I understand that we can tap it to untap another target permanent, potentially generating either more mana or giving one of our creatures pseudo-vigilance, but I feel like there's better options that we could include if we cut this. On to the enchantments. Pretty much every single one of these is kind of fitting the same criteria. They only benefit us if we specifically cycle cards. We have Astral Drift, Crystalline Resonance, Lightning Rift, and New Perspectives. We are only cutting 1 instant, and that is Zenith Flare. Deals X damage to any target and gain X life, which is nice, but that is specifically predicated on X being the number of cycling cards in our graveyard. Now, we did cut about 7 lands. A lot of these were lands that came in tapped that were beneficial since they had the cycling ability, but since we're moving away from that, they were easy cuts to make room for more efficient sources of mana. We have Desert of the Fervent, Desert of the Mindful, Desert of the True, Drifting Meadow, Hostile Desert, Remote Island, and Smoldering Crater. And last but not least are our sorceries. I did cut Decree of Justice, which may come to the surprise of a few people, but I feel that to really draw any value out of this card, you'd have to dump a ton of mana into it, and then these 4/4s with flying, I feel like they could die so easily if someone board wiped the next turn, so all of that mana would have been just wasted for really no value. Migratory Route, paying 5 mana to get 4 1/1 birds with flying, really isn't that fantastic. I get the basic land cycling is nice, but again, as I mentioned, if we're going to have enough card draw that can generate card advantage, surely we'll be able to draw into some of our lands. And Slice and Dice, 6 mana to deal 4 damage to each creature is okay. However, if our opponents are running a lot of, say, big green creatures, 4 damage really won't do a whole lot, so I would like to really replace this with cards that will either exile the board or specifically say destroy all creatures. Now that we have the cards that we want to cut out of the way, let's discuss all the cards we will be adding to this deck. We are going to be adding 2 artifacts to this deck, both are equipments. First is Mask of Memory. Whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage, we'll draw 2 and discard 1. That means either one of our commanders can draw value off of this card. Same can be said for Skeleton Key. It's going to give our equipped creature Skulk, and then we can draw 1 and then discard 1 if they deal combat damage. We will be adding a total of 10 creatures to this deck. Daring Saboteur. It can make itself unblockable. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we will draw 1 and then discard 1. Dream Trawler. It's got flying and lifelink. It's a 3/5. Whenever we draw, it's going to get +1/+0. And then whenever it attacks, we will draw a card. It also gives us a discard outlet, and it will give itself hexproof, and then we will have to tap it if we do discard. Lore Broker. We can tap it, and each player draws 1 and then discards 1. Marchesa Smuggler. Doesn't directly affect the draw or discard, but we can pay 1, a blue and a red to give target creature we control haste, and it can't be blocked until end of turn. Merfolk Looter, it can tap, and then we can draw 1 and discard 1. Nadir Kraken will allow us to draw some more value whenever we draw. It can get +1/+1 counters put on itself, and it can generate 1/1 blue tentacle creature tokens. Neheb Dreadhorde Champion does a lot of work. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player or a planeswalker, we can discard any number of cards. Then we will draw that many cards and add that much red mana to our mana pool. A card that does a whole lot and generates a ton of value for this deck. Seasoned Pyromancer. Whenever it enters, we will discard 2, draw 2, and then for each non-land that we discarded, we'll get a 1/1 red elemental creature token. We have Toothy Imaginary Friend. Whenever we draw a card, he's going to get a +1/+1 counter, and then whenever he leaves the battlefield, we will draw a card for each of those +1/+1 counters he had on him. And Wharf Infiltrator. It has Skulk. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we can draw, and then we will have to discard. And then whenever we discard a creature, we can pay 2 to create a 3/2 Eldrazi Horror creature token. We have 2 enchantments. Dawn of Hope. Whenever we gain life, we'll pay 2 and then draw a card. Since we're going to be gaining life from Shabraz if he's on the battlefield whenever we draw, this gives us the potential to draw even more cards. We can also put out these little 1/1s with lifelink, giving us a little bit of life gain if we need it. And Smothering Tithe. There aren't many ways to ramp in Jeskai, but this is a pretty effective one that I've seen used in many decks. We will be adding a heap of instants. We have Aetherize that'll offer us a little bit of protection. We can return all attacking creatures to their owner's hands. Channeled Force. This is a new card from Ikoria. As an additional cost, we can discard X cards, and then target player will draw X, and then it will deal X damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. Chemist's Insight will allow us to draw 2 cards at instant speed, but it also has Jumpstart, meaning we can use it from our graveyard as long as we discard a card. Circular Logic. We will counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 for each card in your graveyard. In the event we have discarded plenty of cards, this will be a pretty effective counterspell for 3, but I do like it because it has Madness. In the event we want to discard it, we can throw it out there for 1 blue mana. We have Exclude. For 3 mana, we can counter target creature spell at instant speed, but then we will also draw a card. This is a card I just recently came across, Gifts Ungiven. For 4 mana, we can cast this instant. We will search our library for up to 4 cards with different names and reveal them, and then target opponent chooses 2 of them. Those cards will be put into the graveyard, and the rest will be put into your hand, and then we'll shuffle. Keep Safe, offering our creatures a little bit of protection. We can counter target spell that targets a permanent we control, and then we will also draw a card. Learn from the Past, target player will shuffle his or her graveyard into his or her library, and then draw a card. In the event we've discarded a bunch of cards gaining plenty of value, we can just put our graveyard back into our deck and repeat this process. And Tolarian Winds. For 1 and a blue, we can discard our hand and then draw that many cards. For our sorceries, we have Clear the Mind. Pretty much the same effect as Learn from the Past, but at sorcery speed. We have Flux. Each player can choose and discard any number of cards and then draw that many, and then we will draw a card. And Gravitic Punch. Target creature we control deals damage equal to its power to target player, and then we can also jumpstart it. So, if we have Shabraz out on the battlefield and we've drawn a ton of cards, this is a good way to throw some damage at an opponent without ever having to attack. And last but not least, we will be adding in 4 lands. Clifftop Retreat will enter tapped unless we control a mountain or a plains. There's the OG Evolving Wilds. Gyre Reach Sanitarium, we can tap it for a colorless, or we can pay 2 and tap it, and each player will draw 1 and then discard 1. And Sulphur Falls, it will enter tapped unless we control an island or a mountain. And just like that, we have reached the end of this Commander deck tech. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. Leave a comment down below and let us know what commanders you would like to see us build around in the future. We really appreciate the support.